All right, on this last example, again, we've got a cosine graph. So it looks like it's positive cosine graph. So again, highly encourage you to draw yourself a rough sketch. So on a positive cosine graph, it starts at a positive value, goes to 0, goes down to negative, goes back to 0, goes back to a positive. Always starts and stops at the same y value. Okay. We're going to need to know our amplitude. Our amplitude on this graph would be out in front, so that's a 1. And then our period, which is a formula, it's 2 pi over b. So this is 2 pi over, in this case, b is pi over 2, and pi is a number, so this is pi over 2. This is very close to 3/2, because pi is approximately 3.14, so this is almost 3/2, almost 1.5, but it's pi over 2. So this is pi over 2. So now we have to take 2 pi and divide by pi over 2. So we're taking and dividing by a fraction. When you divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. So this is actually 2 pi over 1 times the reciprocal of pi over 2 is 2 over pi. So then your pi's cancel, and you're left with 2 times 2, or 4. So here your period is 4. So we know the distance between the first and the last point. This distance there is 4, and we know it's going up 1, down to -1. So we got plenty of information now to sketch this graph. So let's start at the origin here, and at the origin at 0, we know our graph starts at +1. Okay. So that's our first point. Then we're going to graph the last point, so we need to come all the way over here. What's the distance between here and here? It's 4. Now each block on this graph represents a half. So this is half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. So at 4, we are also at +1. Okay? And we could have just used pi as our reference, because this line has to be 3, 3.5, 4. Okay, so there's 4. Now, we need to plot this point, which is in the middle. Well, what's the middle of 0 and 4? That's got to be 2. So at 2, we're at negative our amplitude. So at +2, 1, 2, we're at negative our amplitude, which is at -1. Then, halfway in between, 0 and 2 has to be 1. So at 1, we're at 0. And then halfway between 2 and 4 has to be 3. So at 3, we are at 0. So our graph comes down and back up. Good. And then it's going to continue at the same interval. So if this is 4, at 5, we would be back at 0. And then at 6, we'd be down at the negative. Okay. And then here we would be on our way back up as we head toward 2 pi. So remember, b is the number of cycles between 0 and 2 pi. So how many cycles do we have between 0 and 2 pi? We have 1.5, a little bit more than 1.5. And what is this? This is a little bit more than 1.5, because 3/2 would be 1.5. But since there's a 0.14, it's a little bit more than 1.5. Okay?